and we talked about how the benefits advisors and either human resources or CFOs maybe spoke a different language. That was part of it. There were questions about what do I say to get in for the first meeting? When I'm in for the first meeting, do I educate? What's the best tack to take? Hi, Heather. That's Heather, right? I guess. Yes. Yep. Okay. So I think this could be a fruitful session. I think we have some folks on the HR CFO side that are pretty straight shooters. Met with Kelly and Heather before, and Terry doesn't hold back. So I think this is going to be really good. And Luke, you're going to jump in as well on that side. And so I think this will be a mutually beneficial conversation, I hope. And I know Brett's been accumulating questions from all the advisors, or will lead that charge. So I think what we'd like to do is keep it free flow as possible, keep it on the track, keep it on the tracks if we get derailed or anything. But I think this will be valuable information. So Brett, would you like to start off?
Yeah, so we'll start off with a question from Robson in Houston. And Robson would like to know, how can I pick your interest to either take a phone call or come to an educational event without coming off as flamboyant or overly aggressive as someone that's not your current vendor?
Well, this is not good news. I'll answer that a little bit. I don't take cold calls. I never call back people who call me that I don't know. So the only way you get to talk to me, and I'm pretty sure my HR director is the same way, is if someone introduces you, or if I listen to you in a seminar that I chose and you're someone that I'd like to talk to, I'll call you.
So what kind of seminars are on your radar?
Well, I get a lot of accounting seminars, of course, but I get EBN newsletter, and I get Benefit Pros, I think it is. When you know how it is on your email when you sign up for a white letter or a white paper or a download of some sort, you get on an email list. And so I go through that stuff, and things that interest me. I like webinars. I like something I can do in a half an hour or an hour at my desk that's on point to something that I'm looking to learn about. So I follow those.
So is it the webinars that are advertised through the EBNs and the Benefits Pro, or would you be receptive if someone that you saw writing articles in there was then reaching out to you?
If I recognize their name, I might be receptive to it. I don't really usually pay much attention to who the authors are of these. Now in this study, I'm becoming more aware of the authors in this field, but probably just because I'm taking these courses. Before that, when I was reading all the articles that I read, I really didn't notice who was authoring them.
Okay. How about, could we ask Heather or Kelly, what would be your reaction to Brett's question? And Lee, I don't know if you can unmute Heather or.
That's Robson's question.
Yes, I would go. I think it is tough to take the cold calls and just be able to manage that. I think from my perspective, there's a fair amount of networking just with other HR colleagues and using their feedback and their experiences to help make those connections rather than email or the phone calls that are coming in.
Is Shroom a valuable resource for you in the HR networking?
Sherm?
Shrooms. Not shrooms, just Sherm.
In HR, we kind of avoid the shrooms, but Sherm, okay. Legitimate professional
network. You get in trouble for that.
So I'll answer that. I think SHRM has been a legitimate, it's a trusted resource. I think that smaller employers tend to lean more on resources like that. Can you guys hear me? I know sometimes my audio is not great. Okay. So I think it is definitely a trusted, vetted resource, but I would echo what Terry and Heather said is it's a lot through the networking. And so relationships and connections that really get you in the door more than any of the more high level things.
Piggybacking on that, are there areas to figure out how we're connected other than LinkedIn that you would know that we would be susceptible to stalking you?
I think when there are, so even in our local area of Lynchburg, there is a SHRM group that's pretty active. Heather and I are personally not active in it. We probably should be more so. But connecting that way. And so if you can get on a non-salesy agenda at a legitimate professional get together and then make the personal connections that way, I think that's another good in. I think Robson, I've seen some of your stuff. Are you hosting some of the kind of breakfast, lunch, quick hit type free educational opportunities? Robson, are you the one I've seen doing that? Robson on.
Yeah, he may be having that. He does do luncheons. You know, reserve a place, invite 20 people in, and do the luncheons for like the exclusive luncheon. And he does a pretty routine, like I don't know if it's every month or every 2 months. He tries to schedule them out so that they're consistent.
Yeah, I think if it's good quality content that is again more education versus sales based, that's a good in. Unfortunately, we've been so busy, it's really hard for us to break away for something like that. But in a past life, that would have been something that I would have been interested in. If I can go and get free education and some free food, it's a nice way to make an introduction.
Thank you, Terry.
I used to go to a lot of lunches and association meetings, and if I were going to try to sell this to my colleagues today, I would go and give talks to associations about this, and I would have to make sure they were superbly prepared, because if you bore them, you're turned off immediately. But if they know you because you're going there as a member, that's a plus. Okay.
So I'm gonna ad lib on the question again. What kind of topics would be appealing without being too complicated in an educational environment? I mean, is that something an employer HR person wants to know about a transparent open network or reference-based pricing or the kinds of PBMs, or does that get too deep too fast?
So from my perspective, I think that if that was the approach that you were taking, you'd want to go with small nuggets. And so you want to garner some interest first. You don't want to overwhelm them in that first session. And so if you pick one topic that's kind of hot and you speak to that with some good data, and then that kind of gets the hook in, and hopefully you've gotten their interest and maybe they want to invite you on site to learn more and to dig deeper into some of the other value-based concepts. I think it's very, very easy to overwhelm people that don't speak this language with you.
Heather? Whoops. Have a mute button there.
Sorry. Thinking about other creative ways, I know recently I've been trying to listen to more podcasts, and perhaps that's, if you're following, I don't know how that works to get the feedback to those that are actually delivering or recording those. But that is a way to just get introduced without the overwhelming part and feeling like that you have to make that immediate connection. So kind of getting a feel for that individual, learn more about the topic, and then maybe there's an opportunity to connect beyond that. To and then that's not scheduled, you know, it's something I can do on my drive into the office. That it has been a way to get to know, you know, other companies or speakers just before that initial call or before an actual in-person meeting.
See, I know we've got some new questions coming in from Alicia on the benefits advisor side. You want to take one of them? Alicia?
Yeah, so I had a question as to when you decide to make a change in your programs you have with your employees, how do you evaluate those employees? Do you question them? Do you have surveys? And you know, how in depth do you go with that? So I know all of you are in this program to make changes to maybe save money or to maybe have a better quality of care. But so I guess my question is, you know, how do you find out that it's something that the employees would welcome?
So,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, Terry. I was just jumping into the empty space.
I'm a little confused by the question because we didn't do any kind of study of what the employees might be receptive to. Basically, our team, who's in charge of trying to get healthcare purchased every year, has to make these decisions. And I don't understand why anybody wouldn't buy into lower cost and better quality healthcare. Especially people who are in the positions that we're in that have seen the increase in cost and the decrease in quality of healthcare over the years. So we didn't do any kind of study of what our employees would have wanted.
So I would say at our company, we're much more sensitive to that. And so usually we are starting at the executive level and polling to see what level of change they feel comfortable with, pending. Again, we're always looking at the other things that are going on in the organization. So this year we've got a lot of acquisitions happening. So that's very disruptive. That's a lot of change. And so we're trying to keep it very quiet on the benefits front because that's enough disruption in itself. And then we're projecting out over multiple years based on the amount of change we think our organization can absorb in that year. And so we start at the executive level and we're getting their feel for it. And then depending on the type of change, we'll go down to certain levels of the employee population to say, you know, we introduced what we call kind of our bundle plan. It's a millennial, driven toward our millennials, and it was very different. So we reached out through focus groups to kind of say, tell us what you really want in benefit space, because for the most part, we're a really aged workforce. And so very different than what the needs are between those two generations. So again, I think it depends on the type of change, how low we go, and the timing too, as far as what kind of feedback we're soliciting. We never want to, if it is Terry's case where it's a driven business, financial, executive decision, and their feedback is not going to impact the direction that we're going to take, we don't go down and ask for feedback and then they feel like nobody listened to them. So it's a balance of what do we want to give them the opportunity to influence versus what's really truly a business decision.
Thank you.
So I have a question, if that's all right.
Of course.
If you're certified, I guess that would be if you're certified in SHRM and in the HR profession, would getting CE credits for one of those events make it more attractive to you, getting 1 or 2 hours of CE credits, hosting a seminar that you might be interested in? Of course, it's free.
Right. I think that could definitely help, because the folks that are interested in that certification are always needing to acquire the recertification points. So it could help. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead. And you said to make sure that we speak their language, but we are all in HR. So, but I guess you mean as far as acronyms and that sort of thing, not assuming that they know what RBP and PBM and all that is.
Right. So when you say PBM, I would think if they're doing anything in this space, they should be pretty familiar with, but they're not going to understand reference-based pricing right away. They're not going to understand
DPC.
all the revenue streams that you start throwing out. And so again, I think it's baby steps, introduce a topic, get them interested, get them educated, and then take it to the next step. So I'll just give some super candid feedback, even with Caterno, who is amazing and everybody likes. He can overwhelm the heck out of some people. You know, he comes in and it's lots of information. It is very anecdotal. So it's lots of really great stories about successes, but they are not built out in a way that the business normally would communicate. And so that's some feedback I would give to anyone. So when I see small case studies with not enough figures, it's not to say that they're not legitimate or they're not. I'm a Caterno fan. Like I believe in all of that, but feedback from people that aren't in that space were, you're giving me lots of information and opinions, but not enough good data to prove what's possible. I'm being super transparent with you guys. You wanted a candid.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm wondering.
That's what you're getting.
I find it hard to
listen to
believe
a lot-
that porno could overwhelm anybody.
So I listen to a lot of his stuff on
Great guy.
YouTube. Is that what you mean, or have you done a presentation? Have you had him come to your organization?
He videoed in with some folks from our organization. Mm-hmm.
So on.
And he's great. It's great. And for somebody who I think I could keep up with it best, just because I've been in this world with you guys and I've been learning a lot over the last several months. But for somebody more cold, that was a lot to process and keep connected.
What should be his approach? Like, what would you recommend to him? Like, what would you're going to give him 3 bullets. What would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, I give myself some feedback too. Like if you're really going to bring in an innovator, someone that's really a market disruptor, I should have prepared the people listening more for that. I thought I did an okay job. After the fact, I did not. I think being more clear with a linear agenda that you're following the thought process from the beginning. And we gave feedback to Emma too, because I really like Emma also, is when you talk about your plan and you're bouncing from a reference-based pricing kind of backbone, and then you hop over and you're talking about opportunities with a transparent PBM, and then you hop over and you're talking about another element of your model. Like I think starting at a high level with all of the elements outlined and then breaking off, the bouncing around is really hard for people to follow.
Yeah.
Heather, I'd like you to jump in because I think you have a little bit different perspective. So I'd love for them to hear from you on that also.
Kelly, who was that directed to? Sorry.
Sorry, my screen froze up too in the middle of that, so I don't know how far that went. But I was just saying, you've heard Caterno's presentation, and you have a little bit different perspective. So I'd love for you to kind of weigh in on that also.
So yeah, I think he, in hearing his presentation, he jumped all in from the very beginning, and there were varying experiences or just knowledge of the things he was talking about, and I think he just kind of raced to the finish line for us, as it felt a bit. And that was a shorter presentation, but I think there's opportunity to talk about, here are all the wonderful things, and here's why you should be evaluating this. And then here's some things that you really need to think about as you're doing that. So here are some risks or some potential impacts that you may not anticipate. And so I think just stepping through the full picture and not a race to the finish with, this is great. Here you go, run with it. So I think also for organizations that might not be so. Talking about incremental steps to get there. So, how do folks have stepping stones? How are companies saying, okay, well, in year one, here's how we're going to take a piece of that and what we can implement and how we can build on that, rather than, again, just it's not all or nothing necessarily. So.
In those conversations and when you have those presentations, when you have so much content built around how someone does it, are you able to separate that consultant and wanting to work with them from where you want to take your health plan, or are they merged together in your mind?
Well, for me, they were merged together, and I've seen Dave's presentation too, and he just talks fast. I mean, and if you're not ready to hear all those things, if they're all new to you, it would be really hard to follow. And there are 3 people in my group, and I had been studying this for quite a while before I started listening. So I followed this stuff pretty quickly, but I still, after all this time, and it's been 6 months, 8 months, the other 2 people on my team, one of them is a little closer to me and the other one is still really far behind, and they don't understand. They still, even after all the information that I presented to them about what's going to happen to the company financially if we don't move in this direction, what's going to happen to each employee with their disposable income if we don't move in the direction to fix this, they're still trying to grasp this. There have been, you got to remember, there's been 20 years of people being put to sleep over this issue, and they don't hear it. It's a long road. It's a huge continuum from fully insured to what we're talking about doing, and we even had moved part way, and still it's hard to get even the biggest why are we doing this across so that everybody buys in. And just 3 people I'm talking about.
If I might offer a little of my own perspective, a lot of what it sounds like you'd be open to me either sounds like a full day seminar or a multi-week commitment of an hour and a half over a 6-week period. But you already said you don't have time for that. So I'm kind of wondering what the happy medium is, because you're right, there's more content to take in a 90-minute sort of prospect meeting, or let's just kick the tires on this consultant and see if they know what they're doing kind of meeting. What you're describing is way more involved than that. And then to somebody like me, if I wanted to, really dig in and give you that foundational understanding and then build on that, would take a lot more time. And I'm not sure I'd be willing to do that for free.
No, I 100% hear that. I think that there is a happy medium, and it's a more concise, linear, data-driven explanation of what you're trying to sell. And so it's obvious that people in this space are super passionate. They're very passionate about it, and that exudes itself, and that's obvious, and that's great. But there's also having sat through a presentation like that, there's this, it's almost like a just trust me. Let me show you a little bit of the data and just trust me. And for folks that are in the corporate world, that's not enough. And so I think, again, just a little more thought into how is it mutually beneficial? Because certainly you don't want to give a ton of your time away for free in multi-week seminars, et cetera. I don't think anybody's asking for that. I think it is just being much more clear about the model that you're trying to sell, how it could be valuable to the business that's considering it, and then also being really upfront with what are some of the risks that are associated with the model, because it's not all sunshine and roses. And when people want to make a decision, they want to understand the good and the risk opportunities.
Kelly, I have a question for you and the other two. In our industry, we have a saying, it's called getting rolled. And basically what that means is, and I'm new to the industry, so I found this out a few months ago. Basically, it's you give lots of good information, and what'll happen is, because you have that relationship with your current broker, my question's going to come here in a second, but what it basically is you bring it to them, and the broker goes, oh yeah, well, we could do that. And they take everything we've supplied and they run with it. I'm just curious, have you guys seen things like that in your industry? I mean, not to put you guys on the spot, but it's just, it is a very, very viable and like serious, and it's such a tough double-edged sword. We don't want to, I totally understand. We want to drop off, let's say for us, once a month, I want to drop off, some sort of small nugget of information for the CFO or for the HR director, whoever handles that. Well, what happens is we give them too much, and then we find out a year later they've completely redone it with their broker. So I'm kind of curious if you guys have seen that, heard that, or anything along those lines.
So just from personal experience, I have not. And I know that Heather and I are a little bit different because we are behaviors in this space, but I feel like more often than not, we're pushing our brokers and our partners, and they're not just in health and welfare space. We find ourselves to be the pushers. So no, I haven't seen our brokers pick up some sort of content from someone else and run with it. I have not had that experience.
Okay.
I want to say one more thing about the data piece. So I think at this time in our marketplace, all we have are case studies from the early adopters, right? So probably large corporate America is not willing to just take it on the faith, of the early adopters. But at this point, that's all there is. We don't. That's either coming in. We certainly don't have it coming in from the big carriers because they're just simply not interested in these sort of models. So even the independent TPAs, I don't think are ready at this time to make this kind of data available because it might not even be mature enough data for them. So I think that even like your company or maybe other parts of corporate America that are similar to you, if you're ready to hear about these things, then you consider yourself an early adopter too. That doesn't mean you have to take it on faith. It just means that to date, I personally don't believe we have large data sets on these kinds of innovative strategies. I think all we have are case studies.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair, and I think too, it's driven by the situation that the company finds itself in. So I think what I've heard from Terry say is she's really at that, catalyst and different. We can't continue to function this way and survive, so we've got to do something different. Whereas Framatome is at a space where the healthcare costs are really hurting us from a business perspective, but they're not hurting us that bad yet. So are they ready to leap full feet in without solid, proven data? We're probably going to be more hesitant. And so like Heather said, we're looking at a phase, move it by bits and pieces to continue to grow it over a multi-year plan. Like that's probably more the angle for us, because with our really conservative regional and global leadership, they just won't move on a decision like that without more data. So that's the flip side of that.
Yeah,
Kelly, sorry, I'm speaking from my computer phone and I got my little baby's room here. I think what's pretty interesting is that there's an idea that we want to come in and help with that information, that data, but no one wants to give it to us. And then so how do we kind of call the current broker's presentation into question, or do we charge a consulting fee to process your data and guarantee savings?
Well, I wouldn't pay for it.
What if it was guaranteed?
I tell you, it's a huge step, and it takes a lot of effort to understand why you want to go this way and to try to figure out how it's going to work. And I'm at the point where in the next 2 weeks, I'm probably going to sign contracts for a value-driven, competitive type product like we've been learning about. And I still don't know how it's actually going to work when somebody goes to the doctors, okay, or when somebody needs a service. And I know the company wouldn't have paid to find this out. They're paying for me to go to school to learn about this. I guess that's true. But you'd have a really hard sell to me to try to get me to buy your help.
We ask lawyers and accountants and tax people to go through our books, and we don't have 3 of them kind of go to market to find who has the best return for us. We find that trusted partner. We sometimes maybe get a second opinion.
Well, I buy attorneys in a different way than that, but and I am an accountant, so I don't know what to say about that. I'm just telling you that the first thing I would do, what we did was we talked to our current brokers about moving out of the fully insured into some of these other vehicles and gave them an opportunity to provide a solution, any solution. We didn't even know about all this stuff. And I get calls all the time from brokers, healthcare brokers, insurance brokers, bonding agents. I get 5 of them a week, and I don't answer any of them, ever. I have a team of 6 brokers that I know that I've dealt with for decades, who I know who they are, what kind of people they are, what I can count on from them, and they got first choice. And the fact is, their choices were not good choices. They weren't what we're learning about here. So that's not necessarily a great way to do it, but that is the way I do it and did it.
Can I ask, I just want to clarify the data question, because Chrissy, I think you said that all you may have is case studies. Case studies involve data. Boeing's done this for 10 years. They love it. They have data. I think something like that would carry weight with large corporations or anybody. So hang on just a second. So that's one.
I don't know who Boeing's brokers are, but let's call them up and ask them to create a case study with lots of data so we can all use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I mean, you should have that at your fingertips, I think.
Yeah, but somebody owns that data. Either Boeing owns it, or the the administrator that is running that plan owns it. So if it's proprietary, it's theirs to use at their discretion, right? So you're right. Boeing has its own case study, and it would be nice if they'd share it with us, but I don't know if I see that happening.
Okay,
I think another really great example, Tom, that you even brought in for class was Marilyn. And so what she was able to do on a very large scale with value-based approaches. Why aren't more people talking about those large-scale implementations?
It's just like really anything else. I personally think it's because the players at the top of the status quo want to tamp down that innovation as much as they can. I mean, you can hear what they say in my state, in North Carolina, where Marilyn Bartlett is actually a consultant to the North Carolina State Treasurer and trying to help him, create the same sort of thing in the North Carolina State Health Plan as she did in the Montana State Health Plan. But he's crucified in the media, on a regular basis. And you know, all of the big power players are going up against him as hard as they can. On the one hand, he's got 750,000 state employees that are hopefully on his side, but on the other hand, he's got almost the entire North Carolina General Assembly going up against him because they're being lobbied by the North Carolina Hospital Association, which doesn't want this plan to go through. So I mean, it's a great question, and people should be talking about it, but I think maybe the reason that sort of discussion is being held at the right level is because there's a lot of inertia to keep it quiet, because there's a lot of people in high-powered places that don't want that information to get out.
Okay, I'm confused a little bit because there is data, there are studies. Aside from North Carolina and getting slaughtered in the press, I mean, if you brought Maryland's case study, you know, in Montana, and you brought Boeing, and you brought other, it seems like you said, if you accumulate studies like this, I think even if you don't have the specific data, which I don't think Terry or Kelly or Heather would expect, but if you have philosophically that went into the value added business whole hog and ended up this far ahead, Maryland Bartlett, $116 million better than planned over 2.5 years. That doesn't suck. You know, that would carry, I think, some weight. But am I wrong, Kelly, or are you looking for something more specific than that?
No, I think at that level, that would make sense. Is kind of, this is a vetted implementation. Here's what went well. Here's what didn't go as well. What we might have learned and done differently, and here's how much money they saved. This is a great thing. But at the smaller case study levels, Christy, like what you guys have shown us before, those are your data points. And so at first glance, I would say, if you're bringing a smaller case study like that is really personal to you and your client base, that one does need to be more detailed. Like, it needs to be just a clear explanation and ROI associated with how you accomplished it, and then what we might be able to expect in a like position.
So I'll tell you a little more about my interaction with Marilyn Bartlett. And when I sat down and talked with her one-to-one about what she did in Montana, I'll tell you that what she told me is the classic case of a leap of faith. It wasn't all
classic. Say that again, Christy. A classic case of what? I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Of a leap of faith. So she had some good support, but she had a lot of people going against her, and she had a belief that this would work if she could, you know, if she could just make it work, right? But they were down to the wire 2 weeks before the thing went live, and they still had 2 hospitals that were holding out. So a lot of it came together right down to the wire at the last minute. So at the end of the day, she might have had some data to go on herself, but at the same time, it was still a leap of faith that she had to just go out on a limb and try something, you know, new, devil may care, and have, you know, just have to take a chance and see if it works. So even those big stories like that have an element of chance to it.
But Tom, I think
Right.
that's kind of where
I would say
the power of the broker's prospecting capabilities are, because we have to find willing participants to have quality conversations with. And if we're coming or uncovering CFOs, HRs have some resistance to new ideas of those consistent prospectors, we have an incredible uphill battle. But if we are smart and thought leaders and drive a marketplace discussion, I think eventually they'll come to us.
So I guess part of this conversation for me is everybody wants to make good use of their time. And so how do you now, Robson, determine after a meeting or 4 meetings, or how long is it before you say, yeah, this isn't going to work right now, and I'm good with that. I need to spend my time somewhere else. Or Liz or Alex Fry, anybody.
If I can't get your data to do the research into the project discussing, then what good are we talking any further? my goal is to understand that it's going to take 18 months to implement a solution. We're going to have to educate you along the way before you make the decision. So I'm trying to get out there ahead of renewal to have a discussion.
Okay, so tell me when that asked for data comes. You said that was kind of the decision point. Do you just case by case?
It's when their curiosity is strong. Like their current relationship is in doubt. I don't know about this. I'm happy to share. There's trust that's kind of shared. And I can be able to use some of the resources we have to throw this data through and get a output report, so to speak, and present it. I'm not going to present the solution by name so they can take it back to the broker. But what else can you do? Promise them things and show them case studies that aren't full of detail and things that are in other parts of the country. It's a tough sell to go that way.
Right. And so my question was, how long do you spend doing that?
I think you create a timeline of expectation and that you do it to the next step can be a fee-based project. Happy to do that, but I'm not going to work. I've stopped working for free.
How about you, Andy?
I think one thing that that we found successful, so we did switch our broker recently. And so one approach you might want to think about is there a smaller scope of work that you can bid and have them pay for at a very reasonable price that allows you to earn their trust and drive that interest to wanting to grow that relationship further? And so when you think about projects that you could do, is there something that would be a worthwhile investment of your time that you could get paid for that is very specific to the client, that provides a return for them that allows everybody to dip their toe in the water? Like, I think that is more a way to get in.
And folks, that's where your pharmacy's at, your kind of direct contracting, maybe some of your shopping tool reports. There are some good pillars that you can
depending
use.
on the client, it can be really small, or maybe it's, hey, let me come in and help you get direct primary care set up. And we're going to carve that scope of work off, and I'm going to support you because I'm the expert in that and your current broker is not. And we're going to handle that in contractual space. And then I'm going to prove myself with this nugget. Or for a smaller company, maybe it is one of those rewards programs or something that's not quite so much to bite off. Then I think it's knowing your client and knowing what they need, but it's really hard to build a relationship from scratch. So coming up with something that is mutually beneficial, that's not super expensive, that you can prove yourself, that I think that is that would be an interesting approach.
Kelly, you kind of are reiterating an idea around Knowledge Hub. And if we could be able to be brokers within our marketplace, speak to pharmacy or a specific component of the healthcare process or purchasing, and then know that we have those small scope of work projects associated with it. SHRM accredited, it's getting people to understand it.
What was that, Robson? Sorry.
I apologize.
Yeah, you broke up a lot.
Feedback in this here and baby crying here. Is that I'm looking at knowledge hubs, building little kind of nodes of information that I can go to employers with, share the insights, and then be able to use those small like aha moments of the employer as a scope of service work or small consulting work.
Yeah, I think that sounds really interesting. What are some examples of some of those that you're doing?
Pharmacy benefit management is a big one. Understanding contracts, kind of why isn't it being redlined, do a contract review. Also then looking at your pharmacy data, kind of more maybe diving into a little bit of specialties. I think we also have some really interesting shopping tools available to us. There's some reports that show potential savings that if your employees went through this savings tool, you would be able to find 10, 15%, say $800,000. I have a couple examples, but that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think communication and effective strategies to reach your employees is also important.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really hard for a company of our size to to break away from some of the more traditional players. And so the C-suite's used to the traditional players. They're oftentimes engaged in other parts of the business. And so for a smaller shop to come in, you do need this opportunity to prove yourself first before they are going to agree to a mass change out. That's my perspective from the company size that we are. Heather, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. I think that's a tough transition. So I agree.
And I think that's what's important. We need to recognize where we make the greatest impact and focus on that area. And get lucky to build a stronger relationship with larger groups, and you can make some changes. It's just not something we wake up tomorrow and go find a 2,500 life group and save.
Say that last part again, Robson.
Sorry, it's just that we need to kind of understand where we make our greatest impact, focus on that area, and then after you've gone through the 250, 300 prospects that you could get through, you're going to win some business. And then as you grow your average size of clients up, you start ratcheting up to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
First, jumping in the deep end, think you're going to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
I had a quick question. I know when we're transferring a customer from a traditional insurance plan to a self-insured or reference-based pricing model, or even using a DPC, a lot of the DPC, they want to know individual medical questionnaires. The stop-loss carriers want the individual medical questionnaires filled out as well. How do you guys feel about that? You know, what's the best approach to take to get a group to do that for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've always worked at big enough companies that that's never been part of the practice. Like, we're able to get enough data. We're already self-insured folks. And so I've never gone through that experience of having to do that. So I can't answer that one.
Terry?
We have been asked to fill out forms before, but in the 7 years that I've worked for this company, the resistance is massive, and we have never done it. We have found every other option available rather than doing that. Our people are, we only have 225 employees, nothing like Callie's company, but they're spread all over the place, and they don't fill out forms. People quit rather than fill out a form, and it's construction. So, you don't have anybody else that you can hire to replace a person that quits. So we just do everything we can to keep anybody from quitting, and we've never filled out that kind of a questionnaire. I don't even recall any time in my career doing that.
It's interesting because we've had quite a few conversations with some TPAs, and the stop loss, it's required for groups under 500 lives to fill out a questionnaire, medical questionnaire, so to see if they want to assume the risk. And so it's one of the things that we thought was interesting, because we wondered, would it be more of an electronic platform that you'd be happy with if you had to do it? If you're not pursuing stop loss, then maybe it's not something that is an issue. But we've spoke to 4 or 5 different TPAs, and they've all indicated to us, and the DPCs have all indicated you'd have to do an individualized questionnaire.
Well, we bought stop loss this year and last year with no questionnaire, so I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, you're part of a captive, right? That closely knit captive that shares information with each other.
Well, yeah, we're part of what they call a captive. Apparently, it's not really. It's really a consortium. I found out later, but we can't get information from them. But I thought you were asking about employees filling out forms about their health.
Yes, it's individualized. Each employee would fill out a medical questionnaire and give medical history and information on that questionnaire.
Yeah, that I've never been asked for that. I've been asked for everybody that's exceeded half of the stop loss limit, the individual stop loss limit. I've had to give their diagnosis and the amount spent, and how many of them there are. That's what the stop loss carriers wanted from us, that I was able to provide them.
Tom, if you'd like, Joe could email you that form so that you can have it and we can share it with the group.
Oh, from Certus?
No, it's EPG.
Okay. Yeah, and I think since Terry, their company is less than 500, but the total accumulated lives that are purchasing the stop loss are greater, so that's probably why.
Well, but where I'm going with Dave Contorno right now isn't that. We're alone. We're just alone, and.
But he has some of the data now, right? With data, you don't need to fill out the questionnaires, but if you don't have the data, you do. And as smaller companies, sometimes you run into that because they won't give you the data.
The only data he has very high level data and like monthly numbers for the group, for our company, and the specific stop loss, what they call high claimants. I can get a report from them for anybody that's over 25,000 for the stop loss period, and I've given him that information. But it's nothing like an entire health questionnaire.
Right. You do have all the RX data, though.
I do. They've given me the RX.
Robson, if you need to breastfeed, it's okay. We can't see below your chin, so.
We have a safe space. I appreciate that.
All right, that's good. How about you, Andy? What do you run into, or how do you determine whether you're going to pursue a client or not?
Geez, I wish I had that problem all the time. I mean, my involvement in this and my involvement in the health of Zeta is to become, my ego. And I listen to the HR people talk, and my ego is to say, look, I'm doing everything I possibly can to make myself literally like a healthcare ninja in this space. Like, I want to walk in the room and literally be, ultra knowledgeable, like, and displace 99.9% of all people, and really have that come across pretty quickly. So a lot of like what I'm thinking about when I'm listening to this isn't so much how to displace somebody or how much time. I think if you like, I've had the opportunity to take my business that exists, that's like really what I would call 1.0, and I have enough revenue that I can kind of work on 2.0, right? 2.0 is the what we're talking about here. So I kind of invested a lot of time and energy into like reading about marketing and reading about how people purchase things and how people think, and about, why they do stuff. And, around what I'm trying to do, it's more like, all right, create a vision, of what they want to potentially achieve. And then Seth Godin, who's like a brilliant marketing guy, he's like, look, when you're doing like crazy stuff like this, or you're doing it, just try to find the minimum viable audience that is interested in what you're talking about, right? So, Kelly's company, I've listened to her talk, and like, they're kind of moving slow, and they kind of have a culture of how they buy, and it's not going to be radical. So for some of the stuff that we're talking about and doing, it's pretty radical. So that might not just be a prospect in general. Like, you need to find the low hanging fruit. I actually got on stage with Dave Contorno last week and talked about a client that we worked on together. And, it wasn't a difficult process, because the CEO of that company was like, he was primed. He was ready for change. Like, all I had to do is tell a little bit of a story, and it was like bing, 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 bing. Smaller company, ready to change. So minimum viable audience, minimum viable market. That all being said, I think what you guys said about David is really all on target. I mean, I listened to David present, and I think David, like everybody else in the world, is like, he's trying to perfect his his model, and I do believe he flies through stuff. And I sit there, and I mean, I've tape recorded numerous sales presentations that Dave's done, and I've had to listen to him over and over again. All right, what's he talking about? How's he doing that? How's he? And I can tell you, having worked with David for a year, he's evolved quite a bit, like even in the last year, like how he presents and does it. So I'm sure he's working on it, but I think all those comments you made were really good, and I think they're all appropriate. And you know, I sit there and I listen to him, I'm like, well, how can I do that better, and how can I communicate that better? I guess my, you know, I kind of was writing some notes and just listening carefully as everybody was talking, and I think one of my first questions that I'd like to ask is, on the HR side, have you guys all read the CEO's Guide? And does that, if you have, does it resonate with you? Like, how do you walk away thinking about that book after you've read it, or what Dave Chase says? You know, so I'd love to ask that question first.
So I have read it, and so my feedback would be there's some very interesting points. There are parts of that book that are fundamental to why I want to do things differently. I would take a step back to what you said though, Andy, there, because I think part of it is, again, knowing that client base. So when you're thinking about a smaller company, they're typically more nimble. Their decision-making process is more flexible. If you're looking at getting a bigger fish, a bigger company, understanding what that governance structure looks like. So does Framatome want to be an innovator in this space? Absolutely. Will we be an innovator in 1 year? Absolutely not. Like, we have to put a multi-year plan in place. And so we've got to have a partner that is willing to start taking the first steps with us to get us to where we want to be in 3 years. And so I just want to make that clarification too, because when I hear you guys, a lot of times I hear you talking about smaller companies. I do want everybody to recognize that difference, that the decision-making process is much more simplified at a smaller company. So that's why you're feeling maybe that you can make more progress quicker in those spaces. But again, really understanding who your client is and how that might be different based on their structure and their size is important.
Makes sense.
But Andy and Tom, I mean, again, it's great us talking about it, but it's still getting that first meeting. That's the hardest part.
You know, if the client is not ready to hear this, you're not going to, never mind. I mean, it's a huge move from understanding what renewal in a fully insured space is to what we're talking about. And it seems to me that if you're going to try to sell this, you're going to find a way to assess somebody's readiness, assess an organization's interest, and maybe find what their pain point is to determine whether it's enough for them to take a step in an unknown direction. And this is a leap of faith. This whole thing is because nobody next door, nobody in the association meeting in my space is doing this. Nobody. I talk to people about this, and I mean, I know a tiny, tiny bit. I'm in my second course here. But when I talk to people about this who are my counterparts, they think I know a million things they never heard of before. It's all—
How powerful is this course then?
Yeah.
Saying. All right.
Really. I had to explain a situation to an attorney a week ago. And when I explained to him I was asking a specific question. When I explained to him what we were trying to do with healthcare, he listened very carefully, asked me a bunch of questions, says, "Why aren't you helping other people do this?" Well, I'm not ready to do that yet, but just the conversation, these facts that we have about this are powerful. It's clear that the current situation is heading us in a terrible direction for the companies, for the employees, and for the country. And if we can just find a way to know that if they're interested in putting a lot of money on the bottom line, and if they're interested in having their person who is diagnosed with cancer and given poisonous drugs when they didn't really have cancer, or should have had a different kind of drug in the first place, or should have paid $5,000 for the drug instead of $35,000 for the drug, You know, you're either ready for, and right, I'm talking about companies our size. I know how to talk about them. And you have to convince me and 2 other people in our organization that it's a better thing to do to move forward. But if none of us understood any of these facts, we wouldn't be ready to talk to anyone about it.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, like you guys need to, you need somebody to push you a little bit, put you out of your comfort zone, but then step back and then be like, okay, you know, because somebody has to create somebody has to give you a nudge, I guess, right? But not too much of a nudge, enough of a nudge that it gets your appetite wet, so to speak. Like that's why I was asking about the CEO's guide, because when I read that for the first time, I sat there and I thought to myself, wow, like there's like a new career here for me. Like I could actually become this person who literally restores the American dream for people and their people. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid, and you know, the truth is,
I did too. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I was like, all right, so that's like my vision, to be able to effectively make an impact on that. And I think that's what drives me to learn and grow and try to, I wasn't trying to be a jerk by saying I want to be the smartest person in the room. But the goal is to be able to, like, the more you know and the more levers that you can pull and the more you can create a vision for somebody and then lead them down the path to help them achieve, putting money back in people's retirement plans versus it going to Express Scripts. I mean, that's pretty awesome stuff, in my opinion. So that's kind of why I was curious. How does the CEO guide resonate? Is taking, one of my marketing people who are going to help me, like one of the things we're going to blog about are a lot of things that are just coming right out of the CEO's guide, right? The points that Dave Chase makes. That so if it sounds like those things you want to hear about those things, you might not be ready to do them, but you want to hear about them, and that might be ultimately what leads you to the advisory services of somebody who can kind of guide you in that right direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'd say yes for the most part, and I would say I am not one to quickly drink the Kool-Aid, and so I read something and I think that really resonates with me and that motivates me to want to explore more and then figure out how the model could work in my space. And so I think one thing I'll say is even coming into this class with the folks that were in the very first class with me, when did we kick this off? Like March. It was almost like if you don't believe, and I don't want this to sound negative, but so there, and then I've had the experience since then. If you're not whole hog in with it, then I just don't have time for you, because I don't have time to get you where you need to. That almost comes across, and that's because you're so passionate and you live in it so much. It's like either you're in with me or I'm on to the next thing. I really don't have time to try to bring you along. That comes across a little bit in some of these presentations. So I would encourage everyone to think about that, because there are people that want to be all in with you. It's just going to take them a little bit longer to get there.
Oh, I agree with that. I think you're right. I mean, but I think that's one of the things, like, when I did my presentation with Dave, which I'll share with you guys. I'll put the link up when I have it done, because I hit on all these topics. I got thrown out of a company. I got thrown out of a company with Dave, like a large engineering firm, big time. And
those engineering firms, they're tough.
Yeah, Dave told the CEO that
he looks so proud of that.
Well, you know what?
And so I would say, so if you guys want really candid feedback, that's what you can't be proud of. You can't be proud of the engineering circle. It's talking about what a jerk you were and that you didn't, really listen to them or hear the voice of your customer, et cetera. So I would encourage you, and I'm a super outspoken person, so I'm just telling you guys, like, that's not the reputation you want to lead.
Right. Well, what I was going to say was, Dave made a comment in the meeting that I worked pretty hard to kind of establish this appointment. And Dave just, said to the CEO, when the CEO asked him, what do you think about the plan we offer? And the Dave's like, I think the plan you offer is cruel and unusual punishment. And that was like the end of the meeting. What it did for me though was kind of say, so I wasn't necessarily proud of it. I didn't wear that getting thrown out as a badge, because obviously we didn't meet that person where they stood, in my mind. But I think what I recognized from that, and this is what Dave Chase personally told me, he's like, the assertiveness of the broker that you decide to go and take into a meeting is going to be positive or negative, and it might move you on a faster track. And what I recognize is like, well, Dave's a disruptor. So if you're going to bring Dave into a company, you need to be aware that he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to literally say just what he thinks. His model is to pick up companies that are that 5% of the economy that are ready to move, like right now. Like, he's not going to wait. So if you're talking to that other 95% of the economy that are kind of,
I think that's what we got to focus on as a gigantic people. Because the 95%
has a different
of
opinion.
them.
Dave Chase and Dave Contorno and the Health Rosetta, there's different opinions within the organization. Some, Sean Sanchin would say that we want to take people through a continuum. Just getting self-funded and out of the gate and putting in a better pharmacy benefit manager is a great start, and that's step one. And step two can be something next year, and step three can be something that year after. Dave Contorno, who is one of hundreds of advisors, right? He's all about, boom, we're going to rip that Band-Aid off on day one, and we're just going to go for it. And I think there's, just like I was saying when I initially started, there are different markets for every advisor, and you just have to.
Those that are appointed and those that are not.
What's that?
Those that are appointed by the carriers and those that are not. If you're not appointed by a carrier, guess what type of business you're going to get? Transparent, non-BUCA plans, and that's all you're going to do. Great for the 5%. But a lot of us have lots of groups that are fully insured and wanting to get there. My belief is that we have to have more meetings week over week and putting them in our boat, making them a client. And if they're acknowledging that there's a problem, frustrated enough to make some changes, they're going to be a part of an employer group learning how to make better decisions together. And that's how, because if we force them to do stuff, we're selling these ideas. And when RBP plans blow up, you're getting a lot of heat. So I want to make them clients first, except that there needs to be change.
Yeah, no, I think, one of my favorite sayings is, this is why restaurants have menus, right? There are companies and organizations that all want to do different things and have different agendas. And Dave's going to be a fit for 5%. That's how it works. I mean, that's the model at the Health Rosetta, right? When I was talking about this with Dave Chase, he's like, look, we're only looking for, the reality to make a movement happen, which is what they're trying to do. They're just trying to pick off the 10 or 20% of companies that are ultimately ready to move, and then they get their critical. This is like the technology early adopters with smartphones. Like 20 years ago, there were people who got the smartphone. Like I'm a late adopter. But it's the curve that happens in all technology. But kind of, I know we're getting off tracks, and I did have couple more questions that I wanted to ask that I thought maybe I could get some good intel on. So if a company is fully insured, they're just kind of status quo, they're just doing their thing, what would you you guys mentioned that you probably didn't want to overcomplicate the conversation, keep things simple, keep things light, like this. What would you recommend focusing on? I'll tell you why. I'll give you a case example. So I have a high-tech company that I literally just took a broker record on there with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. And on 2/1, let me go back. If you guys just listen to this, because this will be a good thing, and then maybe you can give me advice, because this is literally a lunch meeting that's going to happen on Thursday. So Dave and I presented to a company a year ago. And the HR director was at another company that I insured. She left. She went to this new, bigger, high-tech company. They probably have like 400 employees. High-tech, high earnings. Like I'm sure everybody in the company earns, $120,000 income or more. So it's like a Massachusetts progressive high-tech company. So Dave and I did our thing, and then last year, you know, it was just too aggressive for them, right? Because we were talking about RBP, and they didn't understand it. And I just watched the whole thing come about. You know, I was like, you know, this is going to be, if this happens, it's like somebody, the CFO there, who doesn't really, like, he's just doing it on numbers, not on the bigger cultural implications of what they're doing at their company. So anyways, they punted. They said, no, I was disappointed, but I was like, hey, not a problem. Don't worry about it. We have the vision is for you to take better care of your people. The vision is for you to be able to put more money to their retirement or whatever those things are that we talked about a year ago. So I recommended, or I gave them, or I sent them like the opioid crisis book, which is basically the CEO's guide repackaged. And they read it over the summer, and they called us back and they go, you know what? We don't know what we're doing at all. Like, we read the book and we don't know anything about any of this stuff. And they're like, we want to be with an advisor who actually has some knowledge about the things in it and can build a multi-year strategy for us to kind of get us on that path. But we don't want to do RBP right away. We're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. Like, we're not ready for that. And I'm like, amen, hallelujah. I have no problem with that at all, because I'm not Dave, but I'm working with Dave, so I have to kind of pull them back. So I'm having lunch with these people, and they've named me the broker on the plan. So on 2/1, we're going to build them something. So like my quandary literally right now is, all right, when I have lunch with them on Thursday and I'm just kind of meet and greet and we're chit chatting and kind of capturing kind of some of the momentum we had before, and I'm explaining to them how we're going to take them on this strategy. Like, should I start with like, hey, and I'm just leading this a little bit, but to get you thinking, should I be like, hey, what is your vision? Like, tell me what you really want to accomplish. Like, what's your vision for your company? What's your vision for your employees? Like, what do you see as an end game? Because I do want to know, and I want to have measurable results, opportunities. Like, all right, we did this now, we did that. And then do I just shut up, or do I like, what do you think? What would you consult as my consultants give me for advice on that? I'm really serious. I'm asking too. I'm not. There's no.
Well, yes, definitely shut up.
I would ask your client, what do they want to achieve with their health plan, and what things are they happy with their current health plan, and what things do they not like about their current health plan, and try to find out what kind of mission they're on from a healthcare perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, what failures have there been? Has there been a story that they know of, an employee couldn't get a bone scan before an operation because Highmark said no for no apparent reason for a $400, $500 bone scan? They're saying, no, you can't have that. They want him to go and get back surgery without a bone scan, and the doctor wants a bone scan. You'll get stories like that, and you'll find out where are they interested in the employee's experience? Are they interested in the fact that you've got a guy out in the shop who won't get his sleep apnea machine calibrated because he doesn't want to spend the $300 it's his deductible? Or are they interested in the fact that the company can't compete with this increasing expense for healthcare? Because in our space, that's the situation. It's growing to the point where we aren't going to be able to get work successfully if we don't address the problem. So there's a cost problem. There's a quality problem. There's the fact that I can't get any information from anybody problem. So if you asked me that, you would find out a little bit about what I knew about what other options were and what I didn't know. And you could figure out the right thing to tell me to get my interest, because you would know from those questions whether I'm interested in cost, quality of care, employees' financial situation. I mean, I got a person who has a family plan, and he spends $10,000 a year payroll deduction, and he can't afford to take his family for a problem because he doesn't have the deductibles or the co-pays after he pays all that. So you probably could figure out what they are interested in hearing about.
I agree with Terry, but I would take it a step back further than that and start with what are you trying to accomplish as a company and how does healthcare fit into that? Because that's important. And I think that to really make change in healthcare, and what we're trying to do at Framatome is to get our executive staff to stop thinking about healthcare as this separate thing and think about it as an integrated part of how you run your business. And so if you can start to get them thinking that way, and then you drive them into, okay, now what do you want to do with healthcare? How does that fit that higher objective setting?
And elaborate on that. Like, well, how, in your mind, how are those tied?
So for me, you know, what I inherited was a group of people that really saw healthcare as just an inherited expense. It's going to go up every year. And even though it's an allocation back to the business, which absolutely affects the bottom line, they separated those two things. And so stop separating those two things and think about it as one piece of how you run your business. That is a buildup in your business structure. Healthcare is a piece of that. So you've got to be more concerned about pricing. You've got to be more concerned about quality, because that's an integrated part of running the business. Stop seeing healthcare as something separate and see it as something that's integrated.
So how do you assess quality in your spot, or you or Heather? Is it by feedback through folks that have bad experience, or how do you assess the quality of your plan now?
So we don't now. I don't think we assess quality now in the current model. They give us some measures, but I don't think they're true measures of quality. So,
Kelly, are you saying they should think of health or the health benefits plan as part of the infrastructure of the business? When you use the phrase "build up the business"?
Yep.
Okay.
So when you think about, you know, Lee, you came from this world. Everything's about, you know, the cost center rate, which ultimately leads to the bill rate, which the delta between those two are how you make money, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so healthcare is a huge part of the fixed expense that builds into your fixed costs. And so if you start thinking about it that way, you start treating it like other elements that are driving your business costs, and you care about it more strategically if you think about it that way, instead of, oh, it's just this thing on the side that we can't control that goes up every year.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's what the way everybody's been put to sleep all these years. You can't control it. It's nothing you can do about it. Just wait for the broker to come in and tell you how much % increase there is, and then find a way somehow to fit it into your business model. And what we're trying to say is that is not the way you do anything else in your business. What other line item on your entire financial statement is allowed to just run amok? You know, go anywhere it goes. Just wait for them to tell you. Is it 20%? Is it 15%? And in a construction company, labor is everything. And the biggest component of your labor burden is healthcare, and has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And you must understand how those numbers work. That's a good entry too. If somebody is data driven and financially oriented, if you could point out, if you could get enough information from them to tell you what they're spending on labor in a year and what they're spending on healthcare in a year, just the company's portion even, not maybe even the employee's portion, you can project out how that looks with a 10% increase over the next 5-10 years, and ask them how they're going to increase their profit margins enough to cover that. What are they going to do to price their product higher so that they can cover that? That's a pretty big lever from a financial perspective. And then there's the human perspective about how much failure there is in the healthcare system to provide quality care, and how much misdiagnosis, and we don't have a way. I mean, where we are right now, my situation right now is we don't even do second opinions. They're not even required. And look at the value. There's statistics on the value of second opinions that you could provide if that was a lever that somebody might want to listen to. Somebody doesn't want to hear any of this stuff, you're not going to sell it. You're not even going to get an appointment. You weren't going to sell me on it. I have to want to know it.
Right. Just going back to the appointment.
Creating that need.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
going back to the appointment and kind of this, I would say the person I'm going to meet with, we inspired them. So I think they know nothing. Like when I talk, like all they know is what they pay for a single premium and what they pay for a family premium on a $5 million spend. I mean, I'm being really frank about like the situation that I'm walking into. So I guess those are all actually great questions, but I'm almost wondering, like, are they even just this first conversation? I mean, I can gauge the person's level of knowledge for sure and ask some of those questions. And so once they say, well, we know it's a big deal, we're just more inspired by, the opportunity to improve quality over time and maybe do something to lower cost, like achieve the triple aim. Like we just want to be triple aim focused, right? We want to head in that direction. So where would you take that next? Like, where would you go next? I don't know if you guys can put your feet in that person's shoes and like, if they know nothing about self-funding, get into self-funding. Like you guys have a.
Well, one of the things that's the challenge about this what we're talking about is that there are so many pieces to it. And if somebody can figure out how to make it seem or be simple and to understand it, that would really be a valuable thing. But what I've seen so far is it's not simple. It's many pieces. And so
do I come out and say, like, because I'm always riding on the fence, being careful of like telling them. So my thing that I always say all the time, and I believe it to be true, I say, look, when you buy a healthcare plan from an insurance company, it's like going through the drive-through, right? We all know what to expect when we go through the drive-through, right? You walk up to the window, put your order in, you pay, and you get what you get, right? And I always say building a kind of a high-performance plan or any type of a self-funded kind of plan with some levers is more like constructing a gourmet meal, right? It requires going to the grocery store, with a list, right? Bringing the pie it all, put in your car, into the house, peel the carrots, boil the water, set the table. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but the end result is so much better, potentially less expensive, for what you get, and the end result's healthier, blah, blah, blah. So I always kind of walk on that fence of like trying to say, hey, this is going to take hard work. It's not going to be easy. And if you want to go through the drive-through, you see the results you're getting now, like but ultimately when you cook a gourmet meal, we're going to get better results, better quality, maybe, overall. So how much do I share with that person out of the gate? Because I don't want to scare them off. I mean, I'm their broker. Like they fired the Hayes company, to hire me on just my articulating a vision. Right. So now we have to kind of come in. And so what I'm asking really is just like, what would you want somebody to, how would you want somebody to dance with you in like the first dance or two,
I would want you to understand me more. So I think you need to ask some questions again about where the business is, what other things are happening, how comfortable are they with disruption and change. And then by listening and understanding a little bit more about that client, then put forth together a plan that is married with that. So if they are part of this 5% that are ready to be a total disruptor, then maybe you go more heavy. If you fill out this and you're like, no, they're not going to be that aggressive, then you pull back a little bit and put together a multi-phase plan. I think you have to hear them and know them first.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a challenge because I think they probably represent like 80% of all buyers who don't have a clue. Like you're in a different ballpark. Like the other 80% of HR people and like small companies, the reality is they know the co-pays, they recognize the name brand company, and they pay in their thing, but they don't know about self-funding at all. It's just the most basic mechanism. So that's why I'm always like, how do you make them feel comfortable? Because I'm going to start asking questions and it's stuff they don't even have I have to tell them and then ask them like tell, share, and then what do you think of that? I think that's going to be how it's going to go.
Right.
Like, cause I don't think they're like, I know they're just not, when they admitted they know nothing. that
Andy, you said it's a tech company. How many employees?
like 400.
400. And so what do you think you can do constructively with quality and control with a fully insured group, or are they interested in going self-funded? Have they expressed an interest in that?
Yeah.
And do they run well? Is that even a possibility?
No, they want to go self-funded. I mean, they read the opioid crisis book, which is basically the CEO's guide, and they said, yeah, we want to get on that track and we want to self-fund. So ideally, you know, the reality, what I'm thinking, I mean, Dave Contorno might have different opinions, but the truth is, like, what Michael Pullman, who, did you guys have APTA, Michael Pullman, talk to you guys in any of your classes yet? You know, I think from a strategy standpoint, I think the APTA solution from Michael Pullman sounds like it actually could be a wonderful opportunity as like a transition model for a group like that, where, so in Massachusetts, where I live and where this company is, we have like 3 HMOs that are considered the top 3 HMOs in the United States, ranked #1 in the top 10 for, like, by whatever the ranking things are, year in and year out. So everybody around here thinks that they have the, you know, the gold standard, which I'm sure from a customer service and all, like, we don't, like, our bigger clients, like, who are fully insured, like, it rolls. It doesn't, there's like no disruption. There's no problem. Collect your commission check and go home for the most part. Like, the biggest issue is somebody forgot to put somebody on the plan. And, like, that's a big, you know, issue. So from the standpoint of this particular group, Michael Pullman has a deal with Quantum Healthcare, which is like a really high-end care coordinator solution, which is, you know, helps guide people to, like, through the care process. It can direct to other solutions that you might put in that are levers, like where you want somebody to So Quantum, for example, for other brokers who are on here, one of the things they'll do is they do, like, say your doctor orders an MRI for you, and the doctors have, in most healthcare plans, in order to get your MRI approved, the provider has to call the pre-certification vendor and say, hey, I got Frank here, he needs an MRI, here's the clinical outcome or, you know, the clinical problem, and they have to get it approved. So Quantum, actually, one of the little components of things they'll do is when they call up, Quantum will say, hey, Dr. Smith, you know, thanks for calling, no problem, but, you know, we approve this, but did you know that if this employee actually goes to this facility over there, it'll save that employee $1,000 in their deductible? Do you have any problem making the referral to that facility? And, like, they go, like, 90% of the time, that goes, no problem at all, go. So, you know, introducing self-funding, a nice care coordination model to, like, help guide people, you know, was one of the things that
so I think you have to think about that too. So they're looking to you to be the expert in that case. So you're saying it's a little bit smaller company, people that aren't maybe as comfortable in this space. So you are the expert that they have bought. And if they are going self-insured, but they're going to stay on with one of the major players, like a Blue Cross, et cetera, understanding how that's going to integrate for them and being really in the details. So Anthem Virginia will not integrate with Quantum, will not work with them. So they have that excluded in their clause. So you need to know that going in when you're putting a recommendation together for them. Maybe they'll work with somebody else, but now you've got the carve-out fees associated with it. So I would say, especially in a small business, you can't just sell the dream. You have got to be intimately close to all the repercussions associated with it.
Yeah, no, Michael Pullman's, well, you should look into it. Michael Pullman's solution, Meritain.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so he's integrated with Meritain and Quantum, you know, it all works together. So that's, that all talks together. So we wouldn't do ASO. We would put them probably with a TPA. And so I vetted that, and that seems to be, like, not a problem at all. Edison Health is baked in and all these other things. So that's why I was like, I like Michael Pullman's solution, because he's already vetted it. He has 50 clients already doing it. It's got the, you know, some cool high value things built in that we don't even have to custom build. Like, it'll all speak to one another. So did he teach to any of the classes you were in?
They haven't had the
So I
620
was in that
class
first
yet.
class with you, Andy.
And Michael Pullman was he was a professor. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I learned about him, and that's how I literally called him up the other day, and I'm like, hey, I have this prospect, and I'm really concerned about them, and I don't want to keep going on about them if people aren't. This is not helpful.
So was that, and I'll just say, for me, I started this deep dive a couple years ago, and what was useful for me, instead of listening to the acronyms, was instead of listening to people talk about health insurance, just talk about healthcare. Even just split that out. Here's what happens with primary care and chronic disease management. Then there's x-rays, then there's inpatient, outpatient procedures, emergencies. We're just talking about that's all of healthcare, and that's how we're going to look at it instead of talking about acronym. I mean, I'm a gearhead. I look at life through a spreadsheet and all that stuff. So I'm probably atypical in a lot of ways, but I mean, to me, that made it clear. I stopped looking, try to peel back the onion on stuff that was imaginary. It never helped. But when you talk to somebody about what can go wrong in healthcare, you tell me, and it fits into one of the 5 buckets you have. And let me tell you how that works. That seems pretty basic, but I don't know if that'd be useful or not. I don't know.
Well, I think just when you say if you talk to people who aren't yet ready for change, part of me thinks, well, how could they not be ready for change? If you give them, if they know the facts at all, like 65% of people who go into bankruptcy do so because of unpaid medical bills, and 70% of those people had health insurance, like the plans you're offering. 90% of majority of Americans have, and with these high deductibles, 90% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account. I mean, these are real facts that their employees are most likely dealing with, and they might not be in touch with, might not have heard these facts. I probably didn't hear these facts before, this class. So that makes it real, I think, too. And how can someone not be interested in making a change that might benefit, yes, the company overall in the bottom line, but also their employees? So I think telling a story and creating a vision, I think would be helpful. But my question is to the HR people, so many times we run into, that's never going to change because the CEO's brother-in-law or cousin, sister does the insurance, or some sort of relationship that's never going to break. And they just, they just take whatever increase because of this relationship. But at what point, does it become a business decision, when they have the potential to save 20, 40% in their healthcare? When does this, remote relationship, might be a relationship, we went to high school together, whatever. We run up against that a lot. When does that become, okay, we can still be friends, but this is a business decision?
I'll tell you where it's supposed to start. And this is probably not a very popular conversation, but there is this little law called ERISA, and it does have a big portion of it about the fiduciary duty. And so there's, pretty strong main pillars of what the fiduciary duty is supposed to be about. One of the main pillars is that the fiduciary is supposed to make all decisions in the best interest of the plan's assets and the plan's members. And no unreasonable claims are supposed to be paid out of the plan's assets, and a variety of other things. We had a couple of classes, right? Wasn't it Andrew Silverio who talked to us for at least 2 nights on the fiduciary duty? And while it doesn't make the news very often, it's still a very real and present danger of all ERISA governed plans. So that's where it's supposed to start.
Good point, but they might get offended pretty quickly if we come in with guns blazing.
I wouldn't recommend that, but you asked the question. I just had to call a spade. They're here among friends.
No, I think that's a great point. But from an HR perspective, how can we bring that into light without stepping on toes so that you don't want to send?
So I would say at a bigger company, we don't deal with that. So it's not somebody's typically uncle, brother, or whatever that is gauging the relationship. And we are pretty familiar with the fiduciary obligation associated with that, so I don't think we see that.
Let me ask something.
Yeah, maybe in the 50 to 500 space. That's still an issue.
So this is a question that I've been asked to address, by the advisors, and I'm curious from Kelly. We just lost Heather, but from Terry and Kelly, the folks that are finishing this program. So there's one master's program in the country that talks about health benefit design. This is it. We have folks that have changed people over. If you were going to if the university was going to have a press release or have some documentation or do anything about the program in the cities of the advisors, so it'd be something released, is that something that would carry any weight with you all or not?
What specifically are you thinking about? Give me some more details.
It's kind of in process, but this is a program that talks about how to redesign the benefits plan to save companies money. We've had people do it already. It's not foreign, it happens, but this is the expectation in this program, and this person is in your area. So it's not, I don't know how it exactly looks, but with that sort of recognition, and Robson and Andy might have some ideas on that too, but I'm kind of interested from either the human resource CFO position, where would something like that ever get your attention, or would it be with regard to you all not that, not that big a deal? Shoot straight, it's good.
Well, I think if a broker came to me and I didn't, like right now, I'm dealing with 2 brokers that I don't know that we're going to end up going with. And if one of them said to me, I have a master's degree in health benefits design, I've spent the last year of my life learning everything I can about this, and I have this credential, I think it would carry weight with me as a buyer. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if there was a track record with it. You've already changed clients over or whatever.
Yeah, and if I were in the broker space and I knew how egregious some of these violations of ethics are in the healthcare industry, and I saw a press release that said this program was out there, and I gained an understanding that it might give me an option to work in a space that's more honorable and more straightforward and more beneficial, I'd be interested in learning about it.
How about you, Kelly? Is there anything coming out of this program that we could, I'm thinking of the folks, Brett and Andy have already had success with that, and Christy is working on that. She's going to start a surgery center. And is there anything coming out that would get your attention in the circles you run in or read or anything?
I think for sure, again, in that smaller employee base, I think that would hold more weight because I think there is some more flexibility there. But for me, the proof is in the data. And so again, having a track record with it is what's going to matter. The fact that you finished this master's class, if you didn't do anything with that, that's no value to me. So you need to show how you applied it and then how it might apply to me for me to get interested.
Okay. Good, appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, I mean, I still think that there's a huge value in having our students across the country interviewing HR directors, CFOs, kind of things we're uncovering, asking their perspective, kind of where they're at, where they want to go to. And all this data together, it could be considerably valuable.
Okay.
I've had success with 30 of these type of meetings.
Okay.
What size clients are you having most success with, Robson?
On like winning the business on the story?
Yeah, whatever you're measuring success, where are you finding your success? At what is that sweet spot of company size?
The folks who are taking the kind of master learning continuum Keystone project, of those 30, probably average about 150, 200 people. A couple smaller, one real kind of mess up the average. But the business I'm winning from the story are 400 and 500 life groups.
Okay.
I have a question. So Robson, you and Christy and Andy are all in Health Rosetta as advisors. And so Kelly, I'm wondering, you know, is that something, and I don't know if Brett, if you are also, but, you know, obviously Joe and I are new to the program. We're trying to get to the Health Rosetta. And what are your thoughts, Kelly and Terry, in terms of the Health Rosetta? Do you think that you like that network of people that have common interests and common thoughts? Does that make a difference to you at all?
So I would say in the circles that I run in, nobody's heard of it. And that is very interesting to me that no one has heard of it. And so when I start trying to share information, it's just, I get a lot of blank stares from people regarding Health Rosetta. Do I think it's valuable? Do I think it's a good network? Do I think the premise that it's built on is spot on? Yep, but I don't see it being widely known or understood outside of the inner circle.
I agree. I don't know anybody who knows anything about it, and I look at it as I don't know enough about it. I've been on the website, and it seems like a learning tool. I looked there for the article that we were trying to find to review, and I read some of their stuff, but I don't know much more about it than that. Sorry.
Alicia, you bring up a really good point that I think we've challenged as charter advisors for the first year was really kind of figuring out, how do we market it, share it with our marketplace, just like this master's degree.
Yeah.
Once they know what it is, it becomes quite powerful, but they don't know about it. And so if I'm the one telling them about the Health Rosetta and the master's degree, then I'm kind of self-promoting versus not doing that.
But proof is in the pudding, because you guys are all successful and you're doing it. So, you know, we just got to keep it going. That's all, you know.
And I think that brings up a strong point of how valuable the master's degree can be. The consortium, sorry, it's going to get grow together. And I think if we as advisors within the marketplace go out and find 50, 100 businesses, ask 20 questions, spend 30 minutes with them, they're going to start realizing that there's another way to do this. And I'm happy to share what I've been doing, and I'd love to work on a group of people to share these kind of questionings.
Awesome, thank you.
We've had about an hour 45 for the advisors to ask questions, so now it's time for the 5 minutes of questions from the benefits administrators. You can take as many as you like, but is there anything that you're aching to ask, or stuff that's ticking you off about the advisors? I won't tell them. You can just tell me.
Well, I can tell you from my experience that I need you to get me to trust you and know that you're going to understand what I'm looking for. And I don't know how to tell you to do that, but I can spot it when you don't.
Exactly.
Sherry and I had a conversation about that earlier today.
Yeah.
Well, brokers are trying to align compensation quickly, be able to kind of determine that. But it is kind of that Stephen M. Covey approach, like, what is the way that we can do this? And I think it has to be completely transparent. You have to have the knowledge and a plan and have the case studies that support it. But if we haven't done it individually, we have an aggregate group of people who are having success, and we can lean over to Andrew, talk to Brett, and be able to deploy these resources just as if someone was going to be flown in from an Aon Chicago office for a Houston specific problem. 'Cause I'll fly to Houston.
Yeah, that's what I sort of plan on doing with my first meeting of this sorts, is having someone like Dave Contorno to partner with. I wouldn't want to do it myself. Or you, Robson.
So trust building. That's the big
Trust.
thing. That always is a pretty common theme.
And that can take time. And I feel like the larger the client, I always equate it to, you know, a little boat can turn on a dime, but a large ship, it takes a long time to turn it. So that's kind of how I felt. The larger the group, the longer it's going to take usually to make changes like this.
The longer it's
So
going to take, but the more opportunity you have to make revenue off of it. So you're going to have to determine what's your sweet spot of investment versus return.
Yeah, and be patient, you know, and never,
These
never
are
burn any
seeds that
bridges.
you're planting seeds, and you have to give them time to grow, and you can't make your customer move anywhere. Your customer has to decide that it's worth it. You can present a picture that entices them to think about it and to learn about it, and you can give them an opportunity to learn, to let you teach them if they want to hear it, but you can't make them think that it's the next most important thing that needs to be done. They have to figure that out on their own.
Would it be valuable for the benefits administrators to have a visual, to have a YouTube channel or whatever it is, to address the frequently asked questions that these advisors know are going to happen when you talk about changing the plan? So just 2-minute little snippet videos that say, what if I'm out of town and there's an emergency? How does reference-based pricing work? What's your vision for the overall? I mean, if you could go to one place and have that available, does that help or does that not help?
I think it
We've
would
heard
be
about
great.
creating a vision. We've heard about making it real. Is that a step in that direction or isn't it?
Have you seen PragerU's videos? PragerU?
No.
Okay, they're 5-minute videos on all kinds of topics. They're conservative based, so if anybody doesn't like this, it's not political, it's all different kinds of topics. But their goal is experts talking for 5 minutes in a professional level video that's on YouTube or on your phone for Twitter or whatever. And when I want to learn something quick, I love it. 5 minutes. And, you know, I got a decent idea of topic A. And if I want to learn more about topic A, I find another video on topic A. So I think that's a great idea, Tom. I like it a lot.
Yeah, because it's not that, I mean, sorry. I mean, every organization, every company is different, yes, but I mean, at this point, everybody's using the BUCAs, everyone's using the network concept, everyone, you know, so yeah, everyone's different, but everyone's using the same formulary now in some respect. So yeah, I think that would be good as far as this is what it's going to look like, you know, make it kind of chop it up into manageable bites. And like you said, the frequently asked questions, put it in a video that can be kind of consumed as needed. That'd be great. Maybe that can be one of our projects.
Yeah, that would be really good. That would be great if it was on the Rosetta channel. I mean, you know, everybody starts this at a different point.
And what you really need is somebody like Terry, who is going all in, that's getting ready to launch this, to be that voice and to be your advocate. So they want to hear from not another salesperson and not another paid actor. They want to hear from somebody who's gone through the transition and hear honestly what were the successes and what are the things that you should be concerned about. Like that could be your biggest opportunity.
There's a guy named Steve Watson who started Trend Breakers recently. He's the CFO, HR director of a 500 Life group, trying to be able to have these type of conversations away from brokers with other employers.
So Terry, Kelly, anything you want to know from these advisors? Anything? Any advice you want to give them?
I've learned a lot just listening to the questions and everybody's conversation tonight. I don't think I have any real questions for them. I understand how hard it is and what a big challenge this is, because you're trying to figure out how to sell something that nobody knows is out there. You know, I mean, if I know I want to buy a beer, I can go look and figure what kind of beer and, you know, how big, how much I want. But we don't need, I mean, a year and a half ago, I didn't even know this stuff was out there, and most of my counterparts don't. So you're trying to sell something, nobody has an idea of what it really is and why they want it. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, I think my only thing I would say is, I was just going to add to what Terry said earlier, is like what we're always looking for is that trusted business partner, like an extension of our business. You're not something outside of our business, you're part of our business. And it does take time to grow those relationships and build that trust. But once you're there, you know, and you prove yourself, you're typically there. I mean, people aren't subbing out when things are going well. So it's, again, figuring out how much of an investment up front is worth your time to get that long-term client that's going to do really amazing things with you. And so trusted, very knowledgeable, maybe more on the humble side, is, I think, how you're going to win some of these clients.
Okay, I do have a couple suggestions. One, realize that people who are CFOs have been hearing about captive insurance from their brokers from a workers' comp captive perspective for quite a while. So they're not unaware of the financial advantages of captives. And the meat of the captive concept for healthcare is the same as ours. It's more competitive. It's slicing out some of the overhead and profit that you don't necessarily have to have. It gives you more control. So it's not totally foreign to the CFOs, I'll tell you that. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, make sure when you're dealing with us that when we ask you for something, you're responsive. You call us back. You give us the email right away. You help us when we need to be helped. I've been in this situation in the last year where the broker that I have in the group that I have now is completely unresponsive. I can't get him to do anything ever. And I've never, in 40 years, I've never had an insurance broker of any kind act like that. So I'm not saying that that's typical. But when I started this process with these two new guys, I also have had slow responsiveness. Not nearly that bad, but I'm looking for a way to think that you're the right person. And if I need something, if I need to know something right now, and you don't call me for a day or two, or it seems like you're on plane every time I need to find out anything, and I got to wait until you land, or I got to wait until tomorrow when you're next to your computer, I'm thinking, well, maybe this isn't the right person to help me out with this complicated thing that I don't really know enough about.
You want me to put my website up on the Zoom? Because I'm happy to help you out if you need it.
And how did you come up with the ones that you're about to decide on? Where did they come from?
Well, this one guy, the first one came in because a pharmacist who knows our owner of our company called up and said, hey, I'd like to come and visit you and talk to you about your healthcare plan. Got some ideas about pharmacies that you might be interested in. So we said, okay. And he brought a broker with him. And he started telling us
because of a relationship.
Yeah. So that's why he got the meeting. I told you, I don't do cold meetings. And
right.
So you could have gotten through to me through associations that I belong to, that I trust, and I know what they're up to. But that's how he got in. And then I went to an online webinar that he was in. He was a panelist, and Dave Contorno was on that panel. So I heard him, and then I heard about Tom, and then Tom introduced me to Dave Contorno. So that's how I got them. But they're both brand new people, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, if I got typos in the proposal that you give me and sentences are dangling, no period here, and, you know.
Wait, is it Dave? Dave is your new broker?
Dave is one of these guys. I've got two.
Okay.
All right. And, you know, when I get, and slow down, that when you're talking about this stuff, don't use acronyms and go slow and let people, they have to think, they have to have time to understand what you're saying. You know it, you can run, like Dave can run 150 miles an hour easy, but I can miss half of what he says, even with the knowledge that I have. So I can imagine somebody who's really cold and who doesn't know, like the client we were talking about earlier, who is kind of interested. You've got them interested, but they don't really know about all the reasons to do this yet. It's going to be, you got to talk slow and talk so they understand language that everybody understands. When I look at a salesperson, if they're using language that I don't understand, I almost always won't go with them, because I figure if you don't know your business well enough to talk to a lay person about it and get the point across so that I understand it, as long as I don't have a mental problem, you know, then I don't think you really are adept at what you're doing. That's one of my clues, because I've watched my peers who don't know what they're doing and they're just dancing and doing the blah blah thing. I know they don't know what they're talking about, you know, because I know what language they're throwing out there and it doesn't mean anything. So I've concluded over my career, if you're going to talk to me and you can't make me understand what you're saying fairly easily, then I don't think you have the depth of knowledge necessary to help me. So there's my how to sell me.
All right.
Right.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Don't do the blah blah.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, well, Lee, I guess I'll let you take over. I'm going to go downstairs now and have a couple of scrambled eggs. This is day 15 of the keto diet. -7 so far.
No.
Oh yeah.
So
-7 and how many days?
strangest diet. A diet where bacon's good and apples are bad. I don't know, but it seems to be working. So
That's
anyway.
always the case.
On the keto diet.
Do you have another magazine cover?
Actually, I think 2 hours of this is enough. I think what we're going to do is we're going to pack it in for the night. We're going to come back next week. Next week, anybody owes a short presentation on the paper. We'll go through those. We'll talk about some of the readings, answer any questions you have. We'll talk about the final assignment paper we have in here. And so next week, we should get through it in pretty good order. So we have plenty of time to cover what we need to cover next week. And that'll be our last online scheduled class is next Tuesday for this class.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So when's the final project due?
October 6th, I think I said on there. I can look it up in a second.
Yeah, it's the 6th.
Are we not going to talk about that till next week?
Yeah, we could talk about it real quickly if you want. So people are starting to think about it. Let's pull up the assignment real quickly here. I'll just read it real quickly. I'm going to the Moodle. All right, so it says, write an implementation plan dealing with requirements of a successful organizational change concerning a major change in a healthcare plan of an organization, 3 to 5 pages, single spaced. So basically what I'm talking about is how you would go through and drive an organizational change through an organization. And it doesn't have to be you're an outside broker trying to drive through. You could be an internal person also. But basically talk about the steps we've talked about in here, people like Cotter and other people, what they've talked about, make an organizational change. If you want to allude to a real organization and a real scenario that's happened, perfectly fine. If you want to talk about a theoretical standpoint, that's okay too. But so basically take the things we've been talking about and a couple more things we'll add to that next week and apply those to the overall concept of an organizational change and pick the organization, pick the change. I'll leave that up to you where you feel your strengths are. Right. And then so basically the theory that we've been learning in here, apply that to any change. And it could be changing healthcare benefits or it could be something else. If you want to pick something else because you're more familiar with it, that's okay too. Okay. So kind of mull that over, get some idea of what you want to do. The next week, I'll be able to take a lot more specific questions about it if you have them. Right. But certainly I'll be around all week if you want to give me a holler or anything like that, that's fine too. Okay. Okay, all right. Well, sounds good. I'll talk to everybody next week then. If you got any questions before then, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Because I know Terry hates it when people aren't responsive.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right,
guys.
have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Kathy.
Bye.
Bye, guys.